what is an ethical supply chain and what does it encompass in your definition? I'm sure there are many ways to think about it, but what in your eyes is an ethical supply chain? And then also, two-parter, I do this every time and then I kick myself afterwards for doing a two-part question, but I'm gonna do it anyway. How do you vet the factories that you onboard, and what kind of standards are you using, and what things do you measure?
Yeah, actually, I can answer both of those questions in one thing, because they very much work together. So ethical manufacturing. Ethical versus sustainable fashion is, if you're going to really split hairs and define the two separately, ethical is going to be really focused on people and the labor component of our supply chain, and then sustainability is going to have a lot more to do with the planet and our waste and our chemical use and things like that, right? In the ethical factories that we personally will accept onto the threefold platform, they have to have specific certifications that absolutely have a third party auditing body checking the standards once or twice a year. Our good standards accept their self-assessment tools, and to me that's not good enough. We want to have an outside auditing body. It's still a flawed system. It's still something I want to figure out how we can be even better at ensuring standards. But for now, it's the best we've got. And so that is how we will work with factories who have GOTS, WRAP, W-R-A-P, SA 8000, Better Work, World Fair Trade Organization. A lot of people have heard of World Fair Trade. Fairware Foundation. Those are the organizations that we have, or the certifications we've identified as hovering around the 8 standards I'll tell you about in just a second. And then as long as they have an up-to-date certification, they can stay active as a factory on our platform. So that is step one, because when I had this idea, and I started researching around it, I realized there were so many ethical certifications. That was not where the industry needed to be, like reinventing the wheel. So that's who we will work with. That being said, all of those certifications might vary slightly in the minimums that they require, but they're all going to generally go around the same 8 tenets. So we'll see if I can remember them off the top of my head. So you're going to make sure these people are making sure that there is no child labor, for starters. If a child is a minor, but they are, like, let's say high school age, so like all of us probably started having our first part-time job at 16 or 17, that's allowed, but they are not allowed to be working during compulsory school hours or during night sleeping hours. So they're allowed to have a part-time job, but they're not allowed to be interfering with their school. So no child labor, no slave labor. So anyone that is working on the staff is absolutely getting paid. They are there on their free will. They are allowed to quit if they want and leave. There is no documentation being held as a bribe to keep them there. They have all of their assets. Fair pay. Fair pay is where you'll see a lot of variation between the certifications for 2 big reasons. So the first one, or I guess one really big reason, is there's minimum wage, just like in our country, versus living wage. So just like we have year after year, we have conversations around minimum wage in America doesn't actually pay all the bills you need to survive. Same thing in these other countries as well. They struggle with the same issues. So some of the certifications require, at the very bare minimum, a minimum wage for jobs. And then some, like the fair trade organizations, have a living wage. And a living wage basically means that they're ensuring you can provide, a roof over your head, food in your belly for you and your family, and a little bit of savings for emergency, hospitalization potential things that might come up. So that's where you're really going to see a big difference in the price of a product. When something is living wage, it's paying a lot more. Just as you can guess, our minimum wage is not even close to what you need to afford, especially if it's in a place like New York City. So that's where you'll see a big difference. What else? Within the fair pay, the other thing that goes into that is making sure that they are getting, they know what they're working for, they're getting paid on time and through a reliable source. A lot of factories that are, especially rural factories, will make sure they set up bank accounts for their staff so that they have a place to have direct deposit to be paid, which is really great. Then from there, you have no discrimination. So same thing as here. You are hired, fired, paid the same, and hired or fired based on your work and not on your gender, sexual orientation, political beliefs, union affiliations, religion, socioeconomic status, any of that. And then you have the right to unionize. So that is really crucial for some areas where, maybe you feel like you are being taken advantage of and you do need increased standards around your workplace and your pay. You can be a part of a union that fights for you on your behalf. And there is a lot of tension around that in the areas where we do have a lot of manufacturing, and it's protecting garment workers from being fired because they join a union. So right to unionize, clear communication from management. So you have a very clear understanding of what your job is and how you can succeed at it. You're not being abused verbally, physically, anything like that. You understand what you're there, and you can have a relationship with your manager, upper management and mid-management in the process. And then health and safe building working conditions. So this is where you really can dig into what went wrong with Rana Plaza. So you are checking that the building is up to code, that there are a certain amount of fire extinguishers, that all the fire exits are marked clearly and not locked, that there is a restroom, there's potable water, there's a place to have eating for lunch break, that I think that about covers it. So those are the big things for it's well lit, things like that. Those are the things for the building safety. And then the eighth thing, which this will also vary greatly depending on the certification, is that there is at a bare minimum a sustainability improvement plan. So ethical certifications are predominantly focused on labor and labor standards, but they are also focused on having some kind of sustainability metrics growing. The only place that you'll really see that vary greatly is for the GOTS certification, which I like the best because it really focuses on both pretty equally, whereas some certifications lean one way or the other. So the GOTS certification, they're also checking how you're throwing out your water waste, what's in the water waste, what are you doing with the chemicals, how are you separating the chemicals. It gets very granular and scientific. I am not a scientist, but they are checking a lot of those standards and measures to making sure that they're also being very careful with the waste we do have and the chemicals we do use for factories.